Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Cashion Chronicle with Mr. Jamie the Hammer Hartman, coming off of the Santee Cooper Elite Series tournament this past weekend. So, going to get some updates from Jamie on what worked, what didn't work, what could have worked better, and just a full breakdown of his tournament experience there on Santee Cooper. So, Mr. Hartman, thank you for joining us as always.
Yes, sir. Always glad.
Yeah, you're looking awful sharp there in that blackfish hoodie.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, look at you. Looking sharp. I'm telling you, I'm about to get me one of those. I want to call Thane and see if he can't hook me up with one of those cool looking hoodies. So, hey, jump right into it. So thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it. Love to, get your perspective of tournaments and doing these breakdowns. And I've had a lot of people that have watched those, shared those, and said it's been really good for them to hear the angler's perspective of what happened, what they were using, and just, the overall information of it. So let's jump right in. Just kind of start us maybe through with your practice, how your practice went, and then walk us through the tournament and just kind of give us a breakdown of what you experienced out there.
Well, I mean, if anybody's watched it, they've seen an absolute slugfest is what it was. We had big weights. I don't know how many bags over 30 pounds. A lot of big 25-plus pound bags. But what the deal was with Santee, it seemed like those guys that had a lot of experience with it kind of knew what was going to happen. I don't have nothing for experience. I was there one time, but it was in the fall. I think it was October, and totally different deal. But what happened was practice had started, and that first day of practice, we woke up to 24-degree weather. The very next morning, and I got one bite in practice on the first day. One bite, 1 3-pounder, that was it. Changed sections of the lake. I get to the north. That was on the southern end where it ended up all going down. I went to the north end the second day, and I started getting onto a pretty good pattern. So I tried to expand on it, looked around. Things were working really well for me, and guys were struggling really bad still. So things were looking great. Third day of practice, I went up and expanded on it more, and I was shaking an average of 20 to 25, maybe even 30 fish a day, shaking them all. Only ones that got hooked was a 7-pounder, a 6.5, and a 5 1/4. So here I am thinking, maybe I got it because I figured it out. And it was a very slow deal on the cypress trees, very select trees. I kind of figured the whole pattern out, and we had an off day. We had practice Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and we had an off day on Wednesday. And Wednesday was torrential rain pour. I mean, it came down like crazy. I got a little concerned. I knew one of the creeks up there was going to stay kind of clear, and the north end I thought was protected enough to where the mud flowing down the river wasn't going to get into it. So I was confident. Man, I didn't even sleep the night before the event because I was so fired up, and it was right up my wheelhouse where you had to be very, very methodical. You had to place the bait in there just right, and you had to work it like very slow, just right to get them to bite. And it was like what I love to do, very, sensitivity was main key for me because sometimes you didn't even feel the bite. They was just there, but I was getting them, and I was just like shaking them off left and right. So needless to say, we come into the first day of the event. Now, Wednesday did warm up. We did not get cold temperatures that night. It stayed warm, even though it did rain. It was a very warm rain. The first day of the event was warm. We woke up to some pretty warm weather, and it started to evolve, must be. Well, I got by day one in a decent position. I lost one great big one on one of them trees. Absolutely, I said it on stage, that thing manhandled me, man. I mean, it took my drag, and it just kept going, and I couldn't stop her. I tried, but I don't know, she might have flexed my hook out or just pulled off or whatever, but it was that was a game changer right there. And we come in a decent spot. We were inside the cut. But once again, I said it's getting warmer. And the second day, I went out there and started to do the same thing. I got my first bite right off the bat, but it was only like a 1.5 pounder. And then, man, that was it. Like, I had one fish until 1:30 in the afternoon. My whole north end, my primary spot was trashed. What happened was they had hyacinth mats up into the cypress trees, and it was nothing but cypress trees in the swamp. And there were hyacinth mats floating up in there. And what happened was when that rain came so hard on Wednesday, what it did is it broke them all up. So there's little chunks of hyacinth floating absolutely everywhere. And I had a reaction bait deal going where I could get a lot of bites. I could generate a lot of bites. I could move a lot. I could cover a lot of water. And I was getting a lot of bites. It was gone. You couldn't make a single cast without getting that stuff on your bait. So that whole thing was gone. I went to plan B, which was a good one. It had a lot of big fish in it. Stayed in that creek and just tried to make it work. I went up there again the second day to try to make it work. And the hyacinth mats were just still there, and it wouldn't change. So I went back and grinded it out. And we had a full moon coming in on that Friday night. So I figured it was going to be just a timing thing. And at 1:30 in the afternoon, they finally started biting for me. And all I did was just cycle through the same trees, and I just started getting bit. So, but being a slugfest, that kicked off on that south end, and Lake Marion and Lake Moultrie were just on fire. So I was behind the 8 ball, man. I put all my eggs in that basket on the north end. It just didn't work out. But that's the thing with what we do. You got to make a decision. You go north, it's hard to turn and come all the way back south, just thinking maybe something's going off down there. So I tried to make it work what I knew. And, obviously if I were to have a do-over, yeah, I'd do it differently. But if that weather hadn't changed the way it did, I felt extremely confident on at least the top 10.
Wow. And so when you go into those type of situations, did you know, saying that second day, as you go from that early morning fish to nothing, that you needed to, do you back up and say, okay, I need to stay here and try to grind it out? Or did you know, hey, I need to try to make the move south, but just decided to grind it up north? I mean, did it ever click in your head that, hey, I probably need to head that way? Or just when you get locked in, you're locked in?
No, I headed north instead is what I did. I headed further north to where I thought these fish in that swamp, they call it the swamp up there. I mean, it's not a big secret. It's just where in it and how to fish it is the deal. But I figured those fish were going to be moving to where I was trying to get, where I had, where I thought they were going to go. So they were going to move. Was I going to be able to look at them? No, but it was shallower water where those fish were going to pull up. And I would get more aggressive because the water was getting warmer.
Sure.
That was my thought. But I went up there the second day, and it was absolutely Deadsville. I mean, trying to make those casts, trying to get out of the hyacinth, floating chunks. And I spoke to 2 anglers probably half an hour after I got up in there. One guy had 1 fish, one guy had 2, and they had been there all morning.
Wow.
So I spent about another 20 minutes and I left out, and I just went back and grinded and said, I can't run all the way south when I didn't get a single bite in practice down there. I don't know. I couldn't adjust where I was, and where I was fishing in the creek, getting my bites. I knew something was changing, but the way it's set up, for them fish to spawn, they were spawning on cypress trees. That's all that's there. You can't get onto the bank. You can't even get to the bank. You're just dodging in and out of the cypress trees. So, I tried to do what I could do. Like I said, I did grind it out. I'm glad I got a limit. Just missed the cut. Not too bad. And I got decent points. So,
Sure.
Like I said, if things hadn't changed, and that's what happens this time of year with that spawn deal, they've been waiting, and all of a sudden you get a warm up, and as you see, I mean, it just got better and better for them guys. So I wish I could have been a part of it, but oh
Yeah,
well.
it's pretty amazing bags of fish that came in, and congratulations to Drew and those guys. Had a great tournament. So, speaking of what you were catching them on, can you walk us through maybe a little bit on the rod and reel line selection a little bit? You got to give away your secrets by any stretch, but at least some high
No,
level stuff.
yeah, man, it was working it slow. So I couldn't be aggressive with anything. I tried a few aggressive things that wasn't working. I narrowed it down to basically two baits, and one was a shaky head, and one was a drop shot. And it was working it, like I said, 8 ounce head on a shaky head. I was running that on the 7 foot medium heavy, the Cashion spinning rod, and the same rod for the drop shot. And I was running 10-pound braid to actually a 12-pound fluorocarbon leader. And just where I couldn't skip the shaky head, I would grab the drop shot, pitch it against the tree. I'd stay back off, and I would just let it sit there and let it sit there. I could take that shaky head, fire it in there, work it, nothing, and you work it slow, like every little knuckle that you come off of on the cypress trees. If they didn't bite, I'd put it down, and I'd take the drop shot and pitch it in there and just shake it and maybe move it 5-6 inches, stop it, and just let it sit there, and boom, and they'd move off. So they're there. It's just trying to get them to bite it. I felt like I didn't, once I figured out exactly what trees they kept using, I could go back and go back and go back and get bit off them. But that's basically, I run it down to the, I did have a pegged Senko on my, 7.3 medium heavy flipping stick, which in practice I caught a few, but I just didn't even get bit on it during a tournament. They just wanted that real slow deal. And they're big fish there. They're strong. When you catch a 4 plus, they're a tussle. So, I had that great big one on, and she whooped me on that thing, man. But that was on 6 gill spinning reel. Like I said, high seas braid, 10-pound to 12-pound high seas fluorocarbon. That's all it came down to for me. I only had a few rods on a deck.
Well, it's amazing when you go to a place like that and you see those weights coming in, and then you have to adjust all the way down to that finesse and that slow of a presentation. And you and I got to spend some time in the boat together a little while ago. And again, I don't claim to be the world's greatest fisherman by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel relatively proficient enough. But spending a couple of days with you in the boat, there is just such a wide gap of between the average weekend angler opposed to the guys that are out there on the tour making a living. And what you just broke down of how detailed and specific that you had to be to get those fish to bite, because the fish were there. Take someone like myself, I'm throwing a more power type deal or reaction strike, and I'm moving, I'm covering water, but it's just knowing and having that ability and that skill set that just comes with, the talent and the time that you guys put on the water to go into a scenario where they got that big of fish with that type of cover, and you're throwing, a drop shot and you're working it that slow. It just shows where that time on the water, it's invaluable, that information that you can learn. And, I highly recommend, anybody that's watching this, that's much like myself, that loves to fish, that doesn't do it for a living, go in and just really dissect this type of information that we're providing from Jamie, but just any of the other content that's out there on the web, and just, ingest that and just really be able to slow down and understand, hey, there's a lot of ways that you can catch them, but once you really get them dialed in, you're able to be able to pick up some big ones, and some maybe in ways that you typically, in my case, for example, would not have ever picked up and thought about trying.
And it's paying attention to detail. That's the big thing. The trees that came down to it were the trees where I felt something on the bottom. If I wasn't feeling anything on the bottom, and that could be the difference thrown to the right side of the tree, the left side of the tree, the front or the back. So then the next time when I roll into it, I know where I need to cast. what happens is those knuckles grow off the bottom of the cypress trees. You can't see them. They're underneath the water. They're submerged, anywhere's up to 5 foot of water, 6 foot sometimes. And that, when you roll in there, that's the side you want to cast on, because they're not going to be on the other side. And like I said, man, you just couldn't throw anything aggressive to them. I had guys all up through that creek, and me and one other guy were the only ones that had close to 17 pounds out of there. Take, for instance, the Jason Christie just won the Classic. He was in the same creek. I jumped with him all day long, both days. He caught 1 fish the first day and 0 the second, because he was power fishing. So I knew enough. I knew I had something good going, real good, but it just emerged to those fish started scattering off of that stuff. And I think they were moving in, but for me to go in and dissect, 100 different trees on a stretch, I concentrated on the ones that I knew were good, and I just kept rotating them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that from the detail standpoint, and you're right. It's very, again, from the average angler, that's probably, for me, that's the hardest part for me to do, is to slow down and really pay attention to those specific details that, in that case, just from the example that you gave, was all the difference. I mean, it went from, you can catch 0 fish to 16, 17 pounds out of an area, and it's just by paying attention to the details. One thing I did learn is, in pre-spawn in cold water, you don't want to pop a jig.
No.
Now,
how many times you get yelled at?
I don't know, half a dozen an hour. That's one thing you don't want to do. So when Mitch Evans watches this, he'll have a good time with it, because we and him had that whole fight about it. So
I just turn around and start staring at you, right?
Yeah,
hey, what are you doing again?
What are you doing again? Stop it!
Oh, I'm popping the jig.
Popping. And you go back to what you think works, and it doesn't work. So, well, hey, listen, I wanted to first of all thank you for your time. That super great info, and we're gonna be doing this pretty much at the end of every tournament, and I know for me personally, and I'm sure everybody else that has an opportunity to watch this when it gets posted, it's extremely valuable information that you give. And it's like I said, taking that content and applying it to our own fishing techniques. Just what I'm taking away is slow down. Don't be afraid to try different things. Look for something different. And you don't have to be going 1,000,000 miles an hour to catch big fish. Drop shots and shaky heads will catch big fish. So, hey, I want to tell you again, Jamie, thanks so much for being on here. I always enjoy our conversations, and appreciate you giving the details. Make sure we got Chickamauga coming up here, I think, in a week or two. So we'll obviously be following along, cheering you on, and wish you the best of luck in the upcoming tournament.
Okay. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Take care.
All right. See ya.